So welcome everybody to the Aligned RMI Labor Laws and Skills Development Conference. So many synergies between labor laws, compliance, and skills development. I'm very glad that Louis and Jeffrey, kudos to them for putting together this very important event, and I think we can all learn a lot from it. We've got all the movers and shakers here today, and I'm sure everybody is going to benefit from this. I believe that the event is also online, so welcome to all delegates who are online as well. And again, welcome to all delegates who are present here today. So without any further ado, we will get started. And it's such a occasion where it has just happened that at the same time, there is the Technology, Instrumentation and Particle Physics Conference happening in Cape Town. I saw that in the news this morning, and everything is focused on skills and compliance. So it's so fitting that we also have something of this nature here. I saw that on the news. It was mentioned by our Minister Snyman and Zamanzi. Oh, sorry, Blade in Zamanzi. Snyman is his Afrikaans name. But yeah, so that is also happening today. But so for the welcome, I just want to invite the president of the RMI, who has been a leading figure in the motor industry, has contributed a lot to many of our development as well. From the City of Roses, fortunately, we've picked the right rose. So without further ado, Shani Esthuizen, president of the RMI, to open up.
Let's see how it is. Am I good? Can you all hear me? Oh, you look so serious. Esteemed leaders of the RMI, Program Director, where are you? Now you're sitting behind me. Okay, right. Distinguished speakers, honorable guests from both government and industry, and respected labor representatives, good morning. It's a wonderful privilege for me and an honor to welcome every one of you at Nasrec and those that are joining us online. Welcome here, and I'm hoping that somebody will monitor them as well, because they are as important as those of you sitting in the room. You know, you can look at my gray hair, and Marwan made the comment of I've been around for a very, very long time, and have been involved in skills development and on the compliance side of the Bargaining Council also for many, many, many years. So today, I'm very privileged to be with you, and I hope that today you will take the seriousness of the two topics into consideration in your deliberations for a better future for our country, because the Bargaining Council environment, as well as skills development in South Africa, is one of the most critical components to grow industry and to provide business with the kind of sustainability it needs to continue into the future. Skills has taken the backseat again, I think, since COVID. I think the momentum has stopped, even though we have our colleagues here from the CETA, we have Department of Higher Education and Training, and we have the Department of Employment and Labor. I know, colleagues, that every one of you today will make a fantastic contribution to ensure that this event is to everybody's liking, that everybody will learn, and that you will take something away that you can go and implement into your environment. I think the Bargaining Council at this point in time in South Africa's history has a very crucial role to play by keeping up with all the technology changes within industry, to be more responsive to the changes that are happening around us, jobs becoming obsolete, new jobs are being created, new skills are being developed. Good morning, Jock. How are you doing? It is very important for all of us to focus both on a skills development side and from a Bargaining Council perspective to ensure that we are very responsive to the needs of industry. We have to grow business, we have to remain sustainable. We have incredible business people here. I have my wonderful board of directors, some of them are here, and I'm hoping that we will all have an incredible time today. So throughout my 40 years of experience in industry and in business, I've learned one very valuable lesson, and that is to belong is better business. And that is why I am in the RMI and why I have pulled my weight alongside so many dynamic and incredible people to make a difference in the lives of all our employees, all our employers, our stakeholders. We represent at many, many different forums, and we try our utmost best to ensure that businesses have a reason to belong to the RMI. There are many services that we provide, and I'm not going to bore you because I see you already, you want to get into the shake of things. So I'm not going to bore you with many statistics and details today, but it is very important today because the automotive aftermarket sector represents quite a significant portion of the GDP in South Africa. So it is crucial that the 20,000 businesses that are registered within the scope of the Bargaining Council and the over 200,000 employees that falls within that scope benefit from our efforts as the leaders in the industry, and they fall within the scope of the Bargaining Council, but I can assure you that an equal amount of people and businesses fall outside and are in the informal sector and not registered with the Bargaining Council. And I challenge all the stakeholders here today to use the opportunity in South Africa and the resources that you have to go out and identify these people and bring them into the fold of mainstream business. Because if we don't, it is a golden opportunity that we will miss to grow the economy of South Africa. We have to create business that will provide sustainable jobs. And when I speak about sustainable jobs, it's for me the ability that people in South Africa have to be able to provide for their children, to put them through school, put them through university, have a house over their heads, have cars to drive with. That is what sustainable jobs is. We don't want jobs where there's no future and government have to continue providing for the people of our country. We need to stand up and do things for ourselves. And I think business has a crucial role to play in that, as well as our partners and stakeholders of the industry. You know that our industry offers a great many social benefits, and I'm not going to delve into that, but we provide medical, we have retirement funds that are, the motor industry retirement funds are one of the most significant retirement funds in the country. And we have dedicated and tailor-made products like the Sick and Accident Maternity Pay Fund. But I can also tell you today that centralized bargaining and multi-year agreements are great benefit and critical for business growth in the sector. So today you're talking to a topic that is very close to my heart, is the future of bargaining councils in South Africa, and I'm very interested to hear what will become of that discussion. So Marwan, as the moderator today, will capture all of the insightful ideas and concepts and share it with you and our online guests. So we also know that we have some negative customer experiences with our members and with people out there because of the fact that you do have unethical business owners, and the way in which they operate sometimes is so detrimental to the development of our industry, because they would neglect to register with the bargaining councils, or they would underpay people, or they would appoint unqualified people to work on critical safety items in vehicles. And so the RMI was very pivotal in developing the Code of Conduct as mandated by the South African Consumer Protection Act. But that is only the tip of the iceberg. We do so many things for business, and both from a commercial perspective as well as support from a labor perspective for our members. So I just want to, in closing, want to say that I hope you thoroughly enjoy the conference, that you seize the opportunity to expand your existing knowledge, that you seriously reflect on areas of improvement within your respective environments, and above all, embrace the ethos of lifelong learning with enthusiasm. But before I end, I want to ask the CEO of the RMI, that is retiring at the end of the year, and now he's going to be upset with me, but you're going to come here and you're going to welcome them for the last time, because next year you won't be here. So I just want him to say a couple of words. Thank you.
One thing about the RMI president, she will never miss an opportunity to put me on the spot. Okay, so this is unplanned for, so from my side, just welcome to everybody. Obviously, a great honor and privilege to have you here. It's on a topic, or topics rather, of labor and skills, which is very close to me and my career over a 30-year odd period. You know, I've been in the MIPCO and the CETA and the training environment from the beginning until about 10 years ago when I became the CEO. I was operationally involved, and then obviously in my last 10 years, more strategically involved. And I had so many people that I can call mentors and coaches in my career, amongst others, John. You know, she was so passionate on both sides. And we often had our differences about direction and everything that goes with that. But I can safely say that we always ended up on the same page, irrespective of the topic. So I'm not going to single out individuals. We have so many of you online and physically in attendance. So good luck, wish you luck with this conference. I hope that through the debate and the engagement, we will identify 2 or 3 or 4 issues which would need our attention and which the new team can develop in the best interest of the industry, in the best interest of people. And I hope that we will hear again that, you know, South Africa is so unique, and so is the motor industry. We have all this potential in labor, in people, and those skills needs to be developed. Wherever we start, we've started a long time ago, there's so much opportunities in future to invest in our youth. And if we do that right, South Africa and the automotive industry has a great future. But we've got to do that properly. And I'm not even touching on the labor side, I'm just talking skills. On the labor side, in MIPCO, it's going through a bad patch, but I also believe that that can change in time to come for us, labor and employers, to work together to develop the industry into something which is great for all. So thank you very much, and thank you, John, for putting me on the spot as usual. So welcome to everybody once more, and yeah, enjoy the day with us. Thank you very much.
Yes, can we have a standing round of applause for Yaki, who we will be bidding farewell to. Thank you, Yaki. True captain of industry, Jacques Esterhuizen. Thank you, guys. These were the guys who appointed me as the training director at one time at the RMI. These were the guys who took me to Auto Mechanica at one stage, where we had the world skills competition and we booked out the whole hall. These were the guys who told me that training is a national imperative and it has no bounds. So whether you are CRA, whether you are RMI, whether you are FRA, regardless of who you are, we have a national objective to promote skills, and that's what Yaki was talking about. So those who are captains of industry, who Yaki will surely be missed. We're hoping to see him again at some other conferences. But if this is the last time we're seeing him, Yaki, thank you very much. And a standing applause is well deserved. All right. So I have not given the biography of Jani because she will be gracing us again during the show, and I will give a bit more about her. But before we go on, we're now gonna start with skills component of the conference. And we have astute speakers who will be coming up, one at a time. But before we go there, just remember that the objective is to use the labor and skills jargon, as they normally say. Everybody of the seaters and everybody is involved in the labor and skills fraternity will be familiar with these terms, and hopefully they will be defined. You know, at MIPCO, we like to use definitions. All right, so let's see if we can define them. Things like transfer of skills, portability of skills, legislation, regulations, the difference between that. I know it was only in recent years that my astute colleague, Jan, made me aware of the difference between legislation and regulation. You know, what is the purpose of a labor inspector in terms of legislation, and what is the purpose of a designated agent in terms of regulation? So as Yaki said, these are all our mentors. Thresholds, minimum wage, employment contracts, vulnerable working, unpacking, unbundling. You know, whenever we go to these meetings, they say, let's unbundle this thing. National Development Plan is what our focus is all about. But I think Johnny encapsulated it nicely, is that skills development and labor well-being is a national imperative. Johnny also encapsulated in her introduction that belonging is better business. And I don't think in this case it's for the RMI only. It's about total inclusivity. It's about bringing in the informal sector. And just yesterday I heard on 94.7 on the news that since COVID, the illicit economy has grown by 78%. 78%. And we're talking here illicit economy, irregular businesses, counterfeit goods versus the formal economy, where economists are saying that we're struggling to keep pace, the economy is struggling to keep pace with the growth of the population. So these are all the types of things that we need to pay attention to, and this is the purpose of this type of conference. This is what the RMI stands for, and I believe this is what a lot of associations stands for. It's standards, governance, compliance, and as Jani said, inclusivity. So I will introduce our next keynote speaker, Ilse Botha from Bidvest McCarthy. She will be doing a presentation. Ilse is married with 2 children, one of whom just got married earlier this year. Camping holds a special place in her heart as she reconnects with God and brings her closer to nature. But also Ilse, when you see her here, but please people, the venue looks lovely, ne? But there's little space here, so don't bliksem when you come on the stage here. All right. I know Ilse can do it, because I know Ilse more than what she's given to me. She also represents South Africa as a hip-hop dancer. All right. So when you see the figure, try to figure it out. All right. But without further ado, Ilse Botha, please come and join us on the stage.
That's fine. Okay, perfect. Yeah, just turn that way. Okay, so as I walked into the conference room this morning, obviously the gremlin, the compliance gremlin jumped on my back. So what did I see? I saw 2 white chairs at each of the tables. And immediately I asked myself, so what does that represent? Being the EE manager for McCarthy as one of my roles, I said, well, maybe it is employment equity representativity in the room. Okay, so we are well presented today as per the EAP percentages, just by the tables and the colors. So good morning to everybody, and a hearty good morning actually to everybody in the room and those that are connected virtually as well to this conference. When Louis contacted me last week and he said, will you please step up to this event? I felt sort of obliged to say, you know what, I need to lend a helping hand to a colleague. And then it suddenly dawned on me, maybe it's possible that he has been in a very, very tricky spot at that point in time, with his original presenter maybe that he called in sick well in advance, anticipating this event, okay? But I'm here, and sad to say, my planning skills is not as great as the original presenter, so I'm going to now share with you my perspective on the topic at hand. So what is the topic? You just see, there it is. The topic is integrating transformation into business, strategy for sustainable impact. The introduction is, and I think I'm going to move just this thing a little bit away. It's too hard because I'm a loud person. Introduction is, in the pursuit of business continuity and long-term sustainability, it's imperative for organizations to go beyond mere compliance. Requirements such as broad-based Black economic empowerment, BBBEE, employment equity, EE, and also then environment, social, and governance standards, ESG. Instead of looking at this as standalone transactional components or activities, it is important that you integrate all of these things into your core business strategy, because that's the only way that you can maintain or create meaningful and lasting change in your business. The common thread through these legal aspects is really the pivotal role of human capital. And the journey, the holistic journey, can be addressed or approached in a very structured sequence. And that's what I'm going to do by looking at the first topic, which is enhancing social well-being. So incorporating the social aspect of ESG, organizations have to prioritize employee well-being. Now, this goes way beyond making sure that your employees are in attendance. This is really looking at your employees so that they are creating an environment where they are fully engaged, where they are motivated, and where they are performing at optimal levels, not because they have to, but because they want to. It also involves extending this care to their families and the communities in which they operate. Policies and practices foster well-being and minimizes negative impact on the societies and the environment. Those policies and practices should be embraced. Equally important, I think I'm pressing this too hard. Yeah. Equally important is strategic skills development. Now that we have recognized that human capital is the cornerstone, it is very important that you have a structured approach to skills development in your environment. Training should be planned systematically and instead of being an ad hoc approach. Through a thorough business analysis process, businesses should identify skills development initiatives that aligns with their business strategy as well as their transformational objectives. So the transformational objectives we're referring to here is in terms of BBBEE, employment equity, as well as ESG. All of this will ensure that we basically equip our workforce with the necessary and the required skills that they have or that they need for their current roles as well as roles in the future. Now, those that know me well have heard me say this many a time before, but what is worse than training a person and they decide to leave? Okay? It is when you don't train them and they stick around clueless. Okay? So let's rather train our employees so that they, at the end of the day, can be happily in the know. The third point that I want to talk about is dynamic employment equity and succession planning. As impending employment equity industry sector targets loom, industries must emphasize meaningful transformation. And the importance of succession planning becomes absolutely critical because that is what underpins transformation into future roles such as leadership. It's also important to prioritize your internal promotions, as that becomes a transformation or an enabler for transformation at the end. Neglecting training of your employees and rather opting to go externally and headhunt people will hamper transformation as a whole, the progress thereof, and it will also have an adverse effect on the industry. So what do we then mean with organizations need to go beyond mere compliance with legislative requirements? Okay? BBBEE at the end of the day should emerge as the outcome of comprehensive transformation efforts, which ultimately relates in points on your BBBEE scorecard, under management control as well as under skills development. So unlike scenarios where compliance is the only way that drives decision making, this actually signifies a change in focus. Early stages in your transformation journey will obviously reflect some decisions which are compliance driven. However, to get to true integration of transformation in your business, it will move towards prioritizing your staff training, the well-being of your employees and everybody around them, and as well as internal promotions that will then eventually affect transformation. So now that we know that human capital is very important, in addition to it, enterprise development, supply development, and socio-economic development also aligns to ESG principles. And the benefits to corporates in terms of social responsibility is multifaceted. At the end of the day, it links to improved brand recognition, it enhances staff attraction as well as recognition, it assists with increased sales, it helps with customer loyalty, just to mention a few. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that businesses can no longer just focus on shareholder value. They have to operate in a way that benefits society. So in conclusion then, this concept then represents a proactive as well as a holistic commitment to fostering societal well-being, to look at skills development of your employees, effective succession planning, and all of this then pulls together and create a broader transformation economic landscape within South Africa. So I want to leave you with, and just like adding a dash of humor to a serious presentation, is to say weaving transformation into your business strategy can actually make things more exciting. So here's a future where businesses don't just grow, they transform and they thrive. And where we see a world that's created whereby sustainability and success goes hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilse. You can just stay here on the panel because I want people to have a longer look at you. Yeah, I think from what I heard Ilse saying is that it's about TT, total transformation, right? And total transformation includes everything. On the stage you can sit, Ilse. You're part of the panel. And that is ensuring that there is a strategic skills development plan aligned to the SSP, your skills development plan of your sector, your national skills development plan, your EE plan, your BEE plan, and labor legislation as well as regulation. And most importantly, to ensure that the business objectives are achieved as well. So you cannot do it in isolation and it's total transformation that we're talking about. All right, so that's in summary what Ilse has said. And moving to the well-being of employees and sustainability of the business, business continuity, fosters a winning business environment. And then Ilse, just on the black chairs and the white chairs, it's not about EE. It's more for people like me to sit on the white chairs so the flash doesn't have to be used for the photos. All right. All right. But with that said, we will have our second speaker. And that was that second speaker that actually made that remark. So Sabelo Buthelezi, somebody who I've also known for years, will be our next speaker. And just his bio CV, Sabelo has over 33 years industry and training experience, and I know he's been along for quite a while. He has worked as an artisan lecturer, senior lecturer, and HOD within the TVET sector. He was also the head of the electrical section at Indlela, responsible for assessment. He has held different positions within the sector of education and training authorities. He is currently the Chief Director of Special Products in the Department of Higher Education and Training. So you report to Minister Snyman. Okay. Buthelezi qualifies and includes diplomas in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and post-school education, a Bachelor of Education in Honours degree, University of KwaZulu-Natal, a master's degree in Public and Development Management at WITS, and a number of certificates related to skills development. So our next speaker, as you can hear, with a very long and strong pedigree, Sabelo Buthelezi.
Thank you very much. It's feel a bit intimidating to be there. I will not have the guts that Ilse is having, so I will get closer to the people. So I feel a bit better if I'm standing here rather than at the stage. Thank you very much once again for being given this opportunity. Also, when I was requested by Louis to prepare something, I was thinking, what am I going to say? And I put a bit of some condition because this day engaged with while I'm also involved in another international conference somewhere. So I said, no, I will be there on conditions that I will be able to just have very few slides. So I had a choice of either talking around the benefits of training, which suit quite very well from what the previous speaker has spoken, or trying to pretend and be an academic and talk about economics of skills development, which will be the discussion on the other conference that I will be going on. So I thought, let me choose the shorter one and look on the benefit of vocational education and training. Talking to apprenticeship in particular. I hope this will move while I'm here. Looking on the internet, there are quite a number of studies. Hence, I'm referring to economics of skills development. I think as a bureaucrat myself, I've just been humbled to say we can sit in our offices in our government building, but without the industry, we are not going to be able to do any impact in a number of these areas. It's not for the government to come up with a solution, but it's the government is to provide a conducive environment for the industry to strive on. So looking on what are the benefits of vocational education and training, starting at a country level. The reason that I wanted to stand here is so that I can be able to point there. As a country, if we have just above 60% participation rate in vocational education, mostly researchers say you will have less than 5% youth unemployment. There's a lot of studies around that countries that have strong vocational education and training have a very low youth unemployment. Now you'll know the scenario of our country. 80% to 90% of our youth goes to university. Not that I got a problem with that, I don't have a problem with that. But then it leaves less than between 5 to less than 10% going through vocational education and training. And then the question, what is our youth unemployment rate? It's above 60%. So it's opposite of that. It's opposite of that. National unemployment rate, it's above 30%, but if you focus on the youth, it's above 60%. How do we change that around? We need to fold our sleeve and engage with business to assist us. Because as government, we cannot train apprentices, or we cannot come up with a relevant curricula for vocational education for employable skills. So that's the importance at a country level. Now, at a company level, this also linked to what the previous speaker have said. The strong vocational education and training is equals to a productive workforce. I like the scenario that said, you got this unskilled person and you choose not to skill the person. And the person says, I'm going nowhere. I will stay here. Now you are stuck with this person who's not productive because he's lacking the skill. So, but now the industry will say there's a huge cost in training of apprentices. That's correct. Because amongst the cost, I think as industry, you know them better than myself. But some of the costs that you have to navigate through is salaries for trainers. You need trainers. HR personnel. Training material. The wages that accompany that. And a number of other investment that you have to make so that you get that productive workforce. So what are your benefits then if you have to invest so much? What are your benefits as the industry if you have to take your hard-earned cash and invest in all of these things? Is there a return on investment? When do you make a break-even on this investment? When do you start to make a profit? What are your profit margins? Because once you put a certain amount, you want a return. That's why you are in business. You want to see a return. You are not there for charity. You want to see the return. Before I go to when and how some of the areas that we propose and say, let's engage. Let's look on one of the model that as Department of Higher Education and Training, we've put out there for business to engage. That model, around 2017, we conceptualized an idea of turning our TVET colleges that have, for a number of years, have just been glorified high school or dilapidated institutions that no kid want to go there. Hence, every kids want to go to university. It is because of the state of our TVET institution. So we said, let's build them to be a center of specialization. But we also acknowledge that we can't do that alone. Always say, as government people, sometimes we like the sound of our own voices. We always do conference and talks amongst ourselves and convince ourselves and hope that other people outside will change by us hearing our own voices. But in this, we said, we are not going to do this alone. We will invite the industry and put the industry at the forefront so that they tell us what are their members looking for. If we say this 4-wall, it's a motor mechanic workshop, what kind of tools and equipment should we put up here? So we came up with this Center of Specialization, which is a program that strengthens industry and employers' role in delivering high-level artisanal skills required by the economy. So we set upfront industry role. Before we even put the people, let's get the industry to tell us what are the equipment. RMI has been a partner to that, together with a number of other industry associations, CIFSA, and so on, to tell us on saying, this is what you will need. Then we said, now we got the tools and equipment. What kind of a person will need to operate here? We'll take our lecturers and put them aside. We'll need to tell us, let's do a job description with you. You will also be involved in terms of interviewing the person that comes in here. We also then took a strategic decision and said the person who will enter here is not going to be a lecturer, but is going to be a facilitator, so that we move away from the academic connotation of a lecturer someone who will come up with a big textbook. But in terms of the practical knowledge, it's very little. So we went through all that process. Hence, we say the industry upfront. So employer participation in reference group at the course college. We also said when we chose a college to be a center of specialization, we are going to set a reference group. That will be, that's a, you can call it a committee, but that committee, employers amongst themselves will nominate the chairperson, who will then hold the facilitator, the college to account and say, this is not what we were expecting to be delivered here. When my apprentices came back, they did not possess the knowledge that I anticipated. So that we then adjust while we are training. So we have those structures, having monthly meetings at the college, where employers will say, I want to know about the behavior of my apprentice when he's at the college. I want to know about the skills that you are imparting. Is it relevant to what I'm doing in my business? Because I'm investing in this person. So there's the role of that in terms of shaping the program and the rollout, and ensure continuous improvement and updating of the syllabus. How we ensure that? We know that our curriculum, it always get upgraded once in 3 years, but the industry don't wait for 3 years to introduce new technology. So we then said how we are going to roll it out. We will use what we call the National Occupational Curriculum Content, so that if the industry, if on the automotive curriculum, diagnostic is not there, you can then be able to say to your facilitator, let's put that on the, what we call it, the knock. You know, it's a, people from government, we like abbreviations. So I might be talking knock and so on, and someone come and knock my kneecap. So knock is the National Occupational Curriculum Content, which then allows the facilitator and the industry to introduce what they want to be trained at that particular time. As long as it's agreed that it's not going to take longer than the time that the apprentice need to complete his or her training. It can be done. We should not train for passing the trade test, but we should train for competence, so that the person can be competent in what you need as an industry. So, conduct ongoing monitoring and evaluation is part of something that we have introduced. But we have also done the monitoring and evaluation of the whole of this program. Got a very thick evaluation report that is available on the DHET website. If you want to go through that, you can see what our stakeholders are saying about the program. What we say, this will start reducing the recruitment cost of already qualified artisans if you are involved in this program. Another thing, you'll start having loyal, well-skilled apprentices who go to work for them upon qualifying, who go to work for you as an employer. It might reduce your overall cost of artisan work delivered by using trained apprentices to do substantial portion of a qualified artisan, a bit at a lower rate than artisan, under mentoring, of course. Strong company partnership with the support of cost TVET and relevant industry association. Hence, we are working with the industry association. So ultimately, industry or employer get the right quality and quantity of artisan skills from the public TVET. We are trying to move away from a supply based to a demand-led training intervention. We don't want TVET College to train people. When they've trained them, then they knock in your door and say, can you place these people for us? But we want the industry to say, these are the people, can you train them for me? Because the industry knows better than the college. So we want to move to a demand-led as opposed to a supply-driven approach. There is a tool there that is done by one of our entity that you might be able to use. I always think that tool is not promoted enough, Mr. Mohozan. I don't think we are doing justice to that tool. In terms of looking on return on investment, I'm not sure if, like Pastor, I might be talking to the convicted that knows about this tool, but how many other outside that are not here, that don't train because they don't know this return on investment tool that RMI and Mesita develop, that tells you rand and cents in terms of your benefit. When do you start making a benefit? I'm not sure if we are promoting that tool enough. Before I go to the last slide, the previous tool that I spoke about, it gives you a rand and cents of this graph. That when you get this young person or not so young person, it will be at that level before you start the training. Low wage, low skill. You then decide to invest. Now, there is your investment period there. Because the apprentice, once you recruit an apprentice, first month, they will be starting, how much am I going to earn? And so on and so on. Yes, there will be that upfront investment. But if you look during the period of training, before you even, the person even complete the 3-year or 4-year, depending on the qualification, you will reach that point that we call the break-even point, where now what you are putting into this person, you are starting to reap in terms of what this person is able to do. Towards your second to the last year, it goes up. You start getting the return in terms of your, what the person is bringing is starting to be above what you are investing. You start with an investment, giving the, spending a lot of money, but you start recouping your returns there. And there is a tool, that previous tool, it specifically talks to this. And there are a number of other tools that are used, whether it's European countries and so on and so on, that basically say for every dollar that you put into training, what is your return for that person? So now, for the individual, you have moved that person from that unskilled wage to that area now, because that person now is becoming productive. And once the person becomes productive, you start rewarding the person accordingly. So it start also increasing. So that it's not only the benefit of you as a company. It's a benefit to you, it's a benefit to the person that you invest in. So there is a both mutual benefit in terms of your training. My last slide. What are some of the areas that you can consider now as a way of mitigating the red area, your upfront investment? Direct benefits to the employer in terms of participation. Say, currently, I've had a new name for my minister. I will communicate that. I will communicate that name. Yes, approved after COVID. Discretionary grant moved from 165 to 209, 206, 290 per apprentice, paid directly to costs to the employer. Whether it's paid in fourth range or in whichever way, but that should be paid to a participating company. And just upon signing, should be getting not less than 25% of that amount, so as to offset your cost. Now, from the fiscus, we say institutional training at a TVET college is paid for by the department at 80%. So when you are using, unless you are using a private institution, if you are using a public TVET college that is a center of specialization, we will pay upfront 80% of the training. When we started in 2019, we were paying 100%. We were saying we'll cover the whole cost. But as we expand, we then said, let's reduce that, and that 20%, employer now is only responsible for 20%. But also, that 20%, if your apprentice is coming from a family that is having an annual, it's called annual salary of below 350 per annum, you can claim that, or you can ask your college to claim that 20% from the NSFAS, so that you don't pay when you send that apprentice to the college at all. The 80% is paid by the department, and the 20% is paid by the NSFAS. All that you just need to deal with, you just deal with the apprentice wage also being subsidized by that 206 there. To qualifying employers, also always qualify this. To qualifying employers can also get a tax rebate, which at most it might be even be higher than that amount. I also think at one point, Mesita was developing an app in terms of how you can do that tax rebate. So I'm hoping that that app, it was not developed and put somewhere. I can see, I'm hoping it's used, Mr. Mkhosana. Or maybe it did not work. Sometimes we pilot other things. If they don't work, it's also fine that we put them aside. Maybe it was piloted, it was found that it's not working, and it was put aside. So that's my message to you today. That was my last slide. You don't need to read about us as the Department of Higher Education, but you can. So I guess President and the CEO, we are still the CEO, one time we might just have a day where we talk about the benefit of vocational education and training. To even a one-man business, so that we are able to change the situation that we are currently having. We believe that the more and more that we invest in vocational education and training, we will demystify the challenges that we are having with our young people only thinking that it's the university that will give them a better future. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sabelo. Thank you. You can also have a seat in the panel while the technical team rigs you up. I think they're adequately skilled. Okay. All right, then before I commence, I also want to call Mr. Johan Kutsia to join us in the front to form our panel. And then we will have a 20-minute Q&A session that the audience can direct their questions to the panel. So while Johan is making his way up here, and thank you, Sabelo, and they rig Mr. Kutsia up as well as Sabelo, we will then get ourselves ready for that Q&A session. Also, bearing in mind that immediately after the Q&A, we will break for a coffee break. We have started at about 10 minutes late. So in terms of that, we still are on track, but we're still 10 minutes late. We will give you that break and then just request that for those who want some coffee, there's a coffee station out in the front, that you please just get your coffee, return to your tables. There are hors d'oeuvres, and I think more than hors d'oeuvres, platters on the table for you to enjoy. And then we can commence and get going with the second component of the conference as soon as possible. So I would appreciate that. Thank you very much. Johan, you can have a seat.
Mr. Program Director, can I have a white chair, please?
Johan, you are BE specialist, please behave. All right, so Johan in 1985 was appointed as Administrative Secretary of SAMIA and MIF, and now RMI. Whilst working at the RMI, Johan assumed the following position: Client Services Liaison Manager for the Northern Region, Consumer Relations Officer for the Northern Region, Associational Representation for the same region, Regional Manager, Regional Secretary, Regional Representative of MITB, General Manager of Gauteng, National Director of SEPRA. Left the RMI in December 2004 and started BE Dynamics, where he's now a BE specialist. Entered into a joint venture with the RMI Um, people mustn't call me. Entered into a joint venture with the RMI in 2009 and has since been the preferred BE service provider of the RMI. He is happily married to Marine for the past 37 years, and they have 3 sons and 2 grandsons. His motto is, if it is worth doing, do it well and do it for the right reasons. The importance of demonstrating BEE compliance of your business is essential. Skills development to make the break in terms of economic empowerment. So before we go over there, remember colleagues, these presentations will be shared with you. The other thing that I just want to do is I like to do a short summary after each speaker. But what Sabelo was basically saying is skills development requires industry to drive training and for government to provide support to create a conducive environment. So it's up to you as industry to reach out to government. Skills development drives youth employment. That is based on data from skilled-focused countries, so it's not a myth. Government cannot initiate effective vocational development without industry. Industry needs to drive it and come up with relevant initiatives. And the department is calling on industry to support them. It was this very industry, as you recall, I think it was 2003, just after Automechanica started, where we had one of the most successful campaigns with the preparation of the Leipzig World Skills Competition. And the RMI, together with all industry stakeholders, I'm talking about Eddie De Silva, who was the panel beater expert. I'm talking about legends like Stuart Pimenta, who was the spray painting expert, Lee De Sousa and Sean Fenn, who was the motor mechanic experts. That was industry driving the initiative being supported by Masita that made one or resulted in one of the greatest World Skills campaigns. I remember accompanying Jani and Eddie to Leipzig, and what a beautiful event. But again, Sabelo comes to show that industry and government needs to work together. So in terms of that, industry and government must get involved with the NOC. You heard it is the National Occupational Curriculum content. Assess the entire gambit of skills development through basic principles. And we know the basic principles of assessments has always been, you look at it in terms of VAX. There's another acronym for you. Is it valid? Is it appropriate? Is it current? And is it sufficient? It's the principles that you must always apply in skills development. Principles that we live by and principles that keeps us relevant. So with that said, this addresses a national imperative in terms of skills development. It also contributes to the retention of skills, which opens up our economy to global investment and interest. And I think that was a summary of what Sabelo was saying. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Sabelo, for all of that. I will now ask Louis to just go around. And if there are any questions to our panel with regards to skills development and the alignment of BBBEE, you can direct them to our panel up here. Thank you. Okay, are there any takers, any hands, any questions? Unfortunately, we will be directing that only to the delegates who have attended this session. Anybody online, please put your posts up there. This session is being recorded and we can respond to them after the session as well. So any takers, any hands for our panels? Don't be shy.
Marwan, while scholars make up their minds who wants to take a question, maybe I can just direct to Johan, could see a question. In terms of Johan's practical experience with employers in the automotive sector and the ratio of our small employers considering more or less around 15 employees per registered business at the Bargaining Council, Johan, in terms of your assessment of their compliance, and fill us a little bit in terms of Masita's new requirement for discretionary grants when considering applications from employers.
Yeah, thank you, Louis. As far as BEE compliance is concerned, maybe I should just go one step back and refer to the RMI's drive that they have at this point in time, where they encourage members to demonstrate their BEE compliance. I know it's a priority, so much so that I believe the RMI Presidential Committee has placed it at such a high priority that I think they've allocated more than 11 million rands as incentive for members who participate in this drive. You can do the maths. I did that more or less correct if everybody participated. And just on the importance of that, I think, members should realize that the RMI plays a critical role when it comes to engaging with government, lobbying with government and other stakeholders on any matters that could basically affect the viability of the membership. But whenever the RMI engage with the government, one of the first things they have to do is to demonstrate the RMI and its members' commitment towards transformation and economic empowerment. So that is very important. To answer your question, Louis, I think it's fair to say that the majority of RMI members employ 15 or less employees. And I will put my reputation on the line and go as far and say that the majority of RMI members most probably also employ, the majority of RMI members also have an annual turnover of less than 10 million rand. Now that's my reputation on the line. Fortunately, nobody will be able to prove me wrong, but on that point, I think what is very important is if we say that the majority of the RMI members' turnover is below 10 million, then we also say that the majority of the RMI members are already BEE compliant. And all that they have to do to demonstrate that compliance would be to complete the necessary prescribed EME affidavit, have it commissioned, and that would be their BEE certificate. And the beauty of this is it's absolutely free, and except for printing the affidavit, it shouldn't cost you anything. Does that answer your question, Louis?
It does, Johan. Thank you. I'm just looking for hands.
So
Who wants to
EME,
ask?
in my interpretation, exempt micro enterprise. All right,
That's
Johan?
correct, Marwan.
Say again,
Yeah.
Marwan.
No, it's all right. Yeah. Going once, going twice, gone. Any questions for anybody else? I know Isaac is here. Sabelo did mention something about grants. Isaac, something that you want to mention there of CETA grants and application processes there? But we do have a hand, do we? Yes, thank you.
Morning all. I just wanted to find out there's a lot of training centers that are training learners to become competent, just to pass the trade test. And those learners are not even industry learners. Like I'm from an automotive industry, and I really cannot hire anybody that just recently qualified because he's got skill. I'm sorry, but they don't have. What is the government doing to ensure that we get qualified people that are industry ready? Because most of the training center are still training them on 50-year-old training materials. So can that maybe Mr. Sabelo address that with the minister and we change that? Because we are really struggling with the new apprentices.
Is that a statement or is it a question to Sabelo, madam?
It's a question and a statement.
And a statement.
Yes.
Sabelo, do you want to respond to that? Louis, when you're there, just do beep.
She was too quick for me, Marwan.
Sabelo?
Thank you very much. I think this is what we are, the government through Department of Higher Education and Training is trying to address. I spoke about the supply-driven skills development. We have come to realize that that does not work. And we are saying to industry, let's hence we are facing away, we are in the process of facing away. I don't want now to open another can of worms in terms of facing away N1 up to N3. But the reality with the NATED program, I always say, being a former lecturer myself, I've been out of the class for more than 20 or 25 years now. I can walk to any class and give a lesson because that content has not changed. But I've also realized that as much as I'm having a training background, I cannot walk to any workshop and then start facilitating training there, because the tools and equipment that is used is not the tools and equipment that was used then. I will need then either to be trained first myself. That's why through this model of center of specialization, we say, as an employer, recruit a young person, bring that young person to the institution, let that institution then train that person according to what you need as an industry. Be involved in that reference committee so that it will not take you 3 years to say this person doesn't know anything. You will be able to see it within the first 3 months to say this person was at the college for 3 months. I expected this person to have this knowledge and is not having this knowledge. What is happening? Let that be adjusted. We are fully aware in terms of the people that are trained to pass the trade test. So, and we are trying to reduce that by ensuring that we shift the traffic away from those what I call scrupulous skills development. There are people there that are doing quite a very good job. We should not take that away from them. But there are also a number of them that are not doing good, and they are damaging the reputation of the certificate that we get issued. I also sit at the Quality Council for Trades and Occupation Certification Committee. Every quarter we deal with a number of fraudulent certificates that are issued amongst all trades. There are certificates that are just sold out there. And we try to deal with that. We have requested QCTO to come up with a legal framework so that we can deal with these people who are damning the image and the reputation of the certification that we issue. So those are the interventions that we are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. I hope you answered. I think Sabelo's just indicated that management and administration in terms of fraudulent certificates necessary because you might not know who you're getting, and the drive to what they call reflexive competence is the ability to apply your skills in different environments is essential. And I believe there are institutes out here, industry players like our president, Technicolor, and various industries who've promoted that type of drive.
Good morning, Les McMaster. So 48 years ago, I was a young teacher at a technical high school where we trained all the trades at that high school. And later I was the head of a training center for the RMI, which was then still the MIF. We had at that stage brought into the industry young guys with, if you had reached standard 10, then would have been grade 12 now, would have been equivalent to an N3. At the moment, we now have young guys coming into the industry with no basic hand skills. The technical high schools many years ago used to train and teach those basic hand skills. I have employed 2 qualified mechanics right now who cannot saw, cannot file, cannot weld. Now these are the things that basic hand tools and skills that were taught at technical high schools. And unfortunately, the technical high schools were phased out, which led to us having a 30-year hiatus of quality people going into the industry and into trades. Because all the technical high schools were made into academic schools where they learned and taught everything else except basic hand skills. And unfortunately, we will sit with the situation going forward if we do not institute basic hand skills back into the curriculum of high schools and then specialize again as trade schools. So we will always be on the backlog as far as that's concerned. Just to come back to what Danaya said about mechanics, qualified mechanics who can't work. So we also have in our industry probably 30 to 40% of the total workforce are people who have actually worked in the industry for many years. That all they really do need is a trade test to be qualified because they're already doing the work, they're already highly experienced in vehicle repair. Yet we ignore those people. And just to come back to what was said previously about trades, training centers who only teach the trade test. Those very people, the 30, 40% who have already been in the industry for longer than 10 years, who have actually worked, done all the work, are the ones that we should be getting right now, that we should be enabling to become qualified mechanics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Les. I think that was a very good statement. I suppose not directed at anybody. Is that correct, Les? Thank you. Shani, Louis, just for time management, how many more questions do we have if we can round off? We've got one at the back. Anywhere else after Shani? So there's 1, 2 questions, and then we'll cut it off so that we can keep with our times. Shani, you may proceed.
Maybe just a question around the new occupational qualifications. I think, Sabelo, just your take on that and the vision of government around that, the department and the QCTO. And then I would like to hear Ilse's opinion on how you prepare in your business for the new occupational qualifications. Thank you.
Okay, we can start with Sabelo and then move on to Ilse.
With the introduction of a Quality Council for Trade and Occupation and Occupational Qualification, one area that we are looking at, basically, hence, if you look, while we are introducing the occupational qualification, which consists of the knowledge, the practical, and the workplace, and integrated up to the trade test, and facing out the N1 up to N3. So we are saying how the qualification, when the workplace component get changed or the practical component get changed,
the knowledge component also need to follow suit. Because at this point, the industry has been moving with the workplace side, with technology. But the knowledge part that has been offered from N1 up to N3, it has not changed for many, many years. Hence, then we want, with the introduction of Quality Council for Trades and Occupation, we brought that into under one umbrella. And we hope that as there is an uptake of occupational qualification, we will then reduce what we now term the legacy qualification. All those qualifications where you either need an N2, you might have done the N2 10 years ago and you get an apprentice and then you then go and write your trade test. But now there's no integration. And on the occupational qualification, there's also what the exit trade test, which is called the ISA, External Integrated Summative Assessment. It also assess your knowledge component so that it's integrate to what you are doing in terms of the practical. So there is a high drive, hence in the centers of specialization, we only do the trades that under occupational qualification, not the legacy trade. We are trying to promote and say, and those industry, by the way, that's available on the midterm evaluation. How are those stakeholders receiving these learners that are coming out of this occupational qualification? So far, we are getting a positive feedback. There might be teething problem that we need to deal with. That also came out on the midterm evaluation, and we are trying to address that because it was not just a smooth sailing. There are teething problems that we needed to address so that we ensure that we improve as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabella. Ilse, how are you preparing?
Thanks for the question, Jani. I think from a Bidvest McCarthy perspective, we've always been in a very unique position where we've had our own training development department, where you actually make sure that you stay abreast of changes, technology, etc., and ensure that when you train your apprentices that they are always current in terms of the skills that is required within the business. Also, you get ongoing feedback from the management as to what is still required. So it's a continuous improvement process, basically. So from that perspective, I think, we are not too concerned about the occupational qualification as we, from a management perspective in the workshops, they've already trained and mentored on the new skills. However, where I think the greatest concern comes in and where employees need to make sure that they are prepared for the occupational qualifications is to make sure that you know what your service provider, your current service provider offers, their readiness in offering the new occupational qualification, the realignment of their course material to the new occupational qualification is going to be critical, to go back to what the lady said earlier, that they don't continue using the old material and training on carburetors, for example, where it's no longer part of the occupational qualification. So from that perspective, Jani, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. We do believe that industry is not necessarily 100% ready to move completely into the occupational qualification sphere. And I think another thing that's also important is that, from a business perspective, is that what we are, for example, also concerned about is that we battle to get the people to complete the qualification in a 4-year period as per the current qualification. And with the new occupational qualification reducing the time period to 3 years, we're still going to have to get our minds around that one as to how we're going to do it. Because at the end of the day, you want your people to be competent when they complete their trade test. You don't want them just to pass and walk away with a certificate at the end of the day and not being productive and competent when they get back to the work environment. If I may, I just wanted to add something to the previous question as well that Isabella answered, and maybe to pose a question to Isabella, is to say, has government considered maybe opening, I would like to call it a hotline, where organizations like the lady mentioned, if you employ a qualified person and you then realize that they're actually not competent, that you can flag that, and that trade test center can actually be investigated so that we can stop this going around, that you don't have people entering your business environment without the required skills. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilse. Isabella, yes, no question, hotline. Are we going that way or not? Do we, don't we?
That's quite a higher grade.
It's a yes or a
Question.
no.
At this point, I think it's something that need to be considered, because currently we can only verify a qualification if the qualification is legitimate or not legitimate. But we don't have an extent to go and say, yes, this person got a legitimate qualification, but the skills level is not at a person where it's supposed to be. So at this point, we only just say the certificate is valid or not valid. That we do have. But I think it's a good input that we need to take, that we need to take up to say, this person probably, the skills level, let's independently reassess this person and then see what are the outcomes. Because those are the dangers that we are having, to have a person that might have only been trained to pass a trade test, and then other skills are not there. But at this point, we don't have that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that speaks volumes in terms of what RMI has initiated together with other industry stakeholders in terms of continuous professional development. Johan, you wanted to say something before we go to our last question?
Yeah, I also had a question, and it's got to do with funding and cost of training. We know that employers currently do have the benefit when training apprentices of the 12H tax relief. And I just wanted to ask Isabella if you have any idea of how occupational qualifications will be handled in terms of 12H? Or haven't you got to that stage yet? Don't want to put you on the spot. You might just return the favor.
I will not return the favor. In terms of apprentice, whether it's just a different mode that you are following in terms of occupational qualification, I think probably what we need to be discussing is how do we expand that to be, because I think I always say one challenge that we have in the country is to limit apprentice to trades rather than opening up to other occupations, because QCTO develop qualifications across the spectrum. But for trades that are occupation, yes, industry can still claim the tax rebate on that. But I think the discussion is that should that be only limited to what it currently covers, or it should then be going through all occupations so that it becomes incentives for other occupations as well that the industry need, because you don't only need your technicians, but there are also other support skills that are needed where people are looking for different skills. So maybe it's a discussion that we should be having. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Last question, and we can make it brief.
Thanks very much, Program Director. My name is Zanokolo Waile. I'm from the NUMSA Research Department. I just want to pose few questions, but those questions will be directed to both the DHET and the industry players. One, I think one of the most important thing is the context. Under which context are we talking about skills development? Because if we were to take into consideration a lot of factors that affects the South African economy, the issues of globalization, the fourth industrial revolution, and we are in the age of information society, which requires us to pose serious questions to all ourselves, the labor, employers, and the government, in terms of checking the state of readiness of the country to compete effectively on sustainable basis with our counterparts, be it they come from America, Britain, or whatever. But one of the questions that I want to pose is the issue of the lack of continuity. At some stage, we were attending the forums with the former minister, Naledi Pandor. And during those forums, we were told that there's a transition, or there is a project that is explored by government in terms of what is called the dual training system. And there was a comparative analysis or the benchmarking with Germans. But since the departure of the former minister, there's no longer engagements in terms of that particular project, because there were valuable lessons that were shared, some of them by Dr. Thomas Metz, who was deployed in the German embassy at the time. So the issue of continuity is important. If a particular minister is removed and there's a new one, because the world is not static. So where is the state of that particular project? The second thing relates to the return of investment. We are told that on annual basis, the revenue that is generated for the skills development programs in the country is more than 10 billion for all the 20 or 21 sitters. Are we happy with the outcomes? Because what we find out at times, there are bogus providers, training providers of all kinds who want to enter the space, not because they want to advance the skills development programs in line with the imperatives, national imperatives of the country, but they want to, what is called the quick rich schemes at the expense of the fiscus of the country. The last issue is the recent BRICS summit. I attended the BRICS summit, which was for all TVET colleges. And number of presenters from China, Britain, China, Brazil, and India, they indicated the high levels of superiority. They are advanced in so many things. What is our own state of readiness in terms of contributing within the BRICS and globally, given the nature of the information that has been shared within the BRICS forum? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Speaker. 3 questions. I think we can engage on the second questions, the ROIs. I think to some extent that has been answered, but the issue of the billions that is available and how we're using that, I do believe the question of the hotline was quite relevant in that regard. But when we network, please feel free to engage the panel. I will then, for the sake of time, just ask panelists to respond to the other two questions. In terms of continuity and the dual training system, Sabelo, can you answer that for us and just tell us if it's been incorporated or not, and what happens with continuity in terms of responsible person changes? And then in terms of BRICS, supremacy, the state of skills and so forth, at the head of industry development, because they do have industry development initiatives. Maybe I will ask Ilsa if she can, from an industry perspective and training interventions from corporate world, how we coping with that, how we're matching. So Sabelo, over to you in terms of continuity, dual training system.
Thank you very much. In terms of continuity, I must mention that what I've referred to as a centers of specialization is basically implementing the dual apprentice system that was conceptualized at the time of Dr. Naledi Pandor in 2017. If you will remember that in 2017, the Minister of Higher Education and Training was Dr. Naledi Pandor. But also, the discussion did not start there. The discussion started in 2012 with the current minister. I will use his word. He used to say, before he was fired, I don't know how you fire the minister, but he said he was fired before Dr. Naledi Pandor. I'm using his word that he likes to use. And then it continued, that idea of a dual apprentice system to 2017, when we then implemented the centers of specialization. Where we piloted it, there were 4 colleges where we piloted, and those 4 colleges have now been incorporated to the centers of specialization. They are part of the centers of specialization. Maybe we might have just used the terminology, because at that time we were talking about the DSPP, which was the dual system pilot project. We took a lot from the German models, from the Swiss model. I will just be in a conference with the Swiss that are also now from one today, that are constantly monitoring our implementation in terms of how far are we in terms of those implementation. But also we did not take the whole dual system, because when we evaluated it, we thought what works in Germany might not necessarily work in South Africa. But the concept of what we are doing is based on a German and a Swiss model. Maybe to quickly touch base also on the BRICS. I think my panelists here will also confirm that just prior to the major event of BRICS, we had the whole week of engagement, where we were engaging with India, with China, and a number of other. Probably, maybe we might have been laying the carpet, because one of the countries that we brought to Makhethi in particular was Ethiopia, which is now part of BRIC. We were engaged, we were discussing for the whole week, we were discussing the skills, the issues around the skills development, mapping out our issues, their issues, and I must say, at times, we feel that we should not undermine our system. Yes, we do have challenges, but also our challenges are not unique to South Africa. It's the same. If we were requested to make a 3-slide presentation, if you look on the challenges that China is having, challenges that India is having, South Africa and other countries, It's the same. It was like we were copying each other's slide. It's the same kind of issues that they are grappling with. We might be grappling with those issues at a different level, maybe at a higher level than them, but we are having the same kind of issues. They were engaging with us when we were engaging with the employers on saying, how do you get the employer participation? How do you deal with this? We were sharing best practice. RMI was part of that week engagement when we were engaging while we were preparing for BRICS before the main leaders before they came in. But we are having a number of other projects that are currently happening due to the BRICS initiatives that we are currently part of. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabelo. Ilse, you answered, or do you want to respond?
Yeah, I can maybe just add on to what Sabelo is saying. I think we all as employers need to basically take responsibility of this. And in the way of, we are set in the presentation that it needs to become part of the DNA of your organization, the business strategy, that when we do things, we need to do it for the right reasons and to actually move forward. So if it is part of the DNA of the organizations will all take responsibility of who they approach to present the training to them and to make sure that the quality is actually there. And we will then basically as a country move forward. But what Sabelo is saying is 100% right, is that we should not underestimate what we are doing in South Africa, because I think we are in some cases very far ahead of some of our peers, and in other cases we can actually also learn from them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilse. Thank you to our panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Okay, colleagues, we're going to now move into the second component of our conference, which is the labor component side of things. And here we have Stephen Ratai of the Department of Employment and Labor, but we haven't received an invitation and we're not sure if he is a no-show or not. So is Stephen here? Okay, Stephen is here. All right. Louis, just checking if we have a presentation for Stephen. Okay, while Louis and Stephen is checking if the presentation has been received by our technical teams and if we can flight that, I will proceed and just read his bio. Stephen is a former Director of Employment Standards Section and current Director Collective Bargaining. Project Coordinator, coordinating and drafting of Labor Relations Amendment Act, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, as well as codes of good practice and regulations to the amended acts. Department of Transport Ministerial Task Team, the Department of Labor representatives in the Department of Transport Ministerial Task Team, which looked at the reduction of speed limits on the road. Yeah, one is speed, there's the guy. And also country representative for the Labour Council in Mauritius, represented the country at English-speaking countries Labour Council in Mauritius, and he delivered a paper on challenges facing the Secretariat of tripartite bodies in South Africa. Government representative, NADLAC Section 77 Committee, NADLAC Labour Market Chamber, member of NADLAC task teams that dealt with the company bill, insolvency bill, the typical forms of employment and casualization, and the national minimum wages, and dealing with conflict in the workplace. Governing bodies participation, he was also part of the CCMA governing body, sheltered employment factories, and coordinator. So while in the department, former Secretary of SA, US Binational Commission, Human Resources Development, HRD, Committee, coordinate committee, SA Binational Commission, and so forth and so forth. So quite a long list of experiences. So, ladies and gentlemen, from the Department of Employment and Labor, Mr. Stephen Ratai, please give him a warm welcome. Thank you.
Allow me to express my deepest sense of gratitude to the program director, the president, CEO, and all invited guests for the invitation to invite the Department of Labor. And while I'm still waiting for my presentation, maybe I can say a word of prayer. I can see some people are eating, you know. Prayer will make you, you know, you eat well, you don't. It's our nature. Colleagues and ladies and gentlemen, I've been requested to come and talk about collective bargaining or the future of collective bargaining. Yes, I've been requested to talk about the future of collective bargaining. You would know, you know, I was listening to some of the speakers here speaking and reflecting on a number of issues, skills. Yes, thank you. And what came to my mind is if we have this kind of social dialogue that we are talking about, network, labor, business and communities, why are we here today as a country? Why are we here today as a country? And I hear the reflection on BRICS, you know, as BRICS member or BRIC member, if you take South Africa out as, and the question, what are we adding? What value do we add? You know, I'm a bit worried from my personal perspective, and I believe we need a serious endeavor. I was called one day to come and, you know, write concept paper and add around the issue of social compact. And one of my remarks in that paper was to say, we all have papers. You talk about green economy. You talk about Asgiza. You talk all about these things. I said, possibly maybe we don't need this thing. We had job summits. We had investments, but why are we here? You know, and these are the things that worries me a lot. And collective bargaining operate within this space. And possibly we need to have that endeavor, call ourselves and be honest to ourselves. You know, my problem is that all of us can report, but what's the impact of what we are reporting? It's making change, it's creating employment, because you will see over the years, we talk about inequalities, you know, the gaps of inequalities, poverty, and you add these triple challenges that we had over the years. And that's why I'm saying possibly we need to call endeavor and be honest to ourselves, you know, and yeah. Otherwise, we'll be calling these workshops, these meetings, and what, and we get the same thing. Then they call it then madness if things are like that. Ladies and gentlemen, those were my remarks and personal one. Don't hold me accountable, my colleague from government. You know, yeah. Possibly you would know by now, collective bargaining is not something that happens out there, you know, without a context, without an environment. And one of the things that collective bargaining finds itself in today is what we call economic downturn that the world is facing. Because economy affects collective bargaining. When we talk about wages, when we negotiate, businesses, you know, productivity and all these things, making money, and we want to talk about wages. We can't talk about wages without the context of what is happening. And possibly it's one of the biggest challenges. I remember the governor of the Reserve Bank saying to Network social partners, the problem is not 7% that is demanded on the negotiating table, but whether productivity meets that 7% or the economic climate that we are talking about meets that 7%. I'm not mentioning labor here, please. Yes. And the second thing that we find ourselves in is that we find ourselves in the context of geopolitics that are happening in the world, which impact on collective bargaining. Because of the wars, prices will go up, oil, inflation, the reserve, central banks all over the world, they increase interest rates. And then workers' wages or livelihood are eroded. And this impact on collective bargaining, the context. And it talks also to when we are at the table, you know, negotiating, what are we saying about these factors? What are we saying about these factors? The other thing that I said the other time when the minister was talking somewhere in his speech and say, if we play a game, a winner takes all, and win at any cost, we all find ourselves facing our own demise. And possibly it's some of the fruits of what is happening in this country. A win at any cost causes all of us to go down. Then all these factors came at a time when all countries were facing the worst devastating COVID, or COVID-19, so to say. As I've said, these are the issues. You can't talk about collective bargaining until you talk about the context. The context will inform the demands that are on the table. If we want to talk about the future of collective bargaining, I remember the former Secretary General of COSATU reflecting on strikes and say, sometimes we must think about strikes, when to call the strikes. When the economy is not doing well, and we call strikes, at the end of the day, when we have called those strikes, workers are retrenched. We must talk about these factors if we want to talk about collective bargaining. It's part of collective bargaining. And the last point says, possibly we are floating because of China. The world is floating because of China. Because I remember during COVID and this economic downturn, everybody was talking about China's economy coming, rebounding, and all these things. We are floating. Whether that is still true, I don't know. I'm still on the same slide? Okay, no, I've jumped now. Thank you. Now, you can't talk about international factors unless you also zoom internally. What is happening internally? You would know that South Africa is not an isolated place. It's not an island, it's part of the global community. What is happening in the global community is also affecting us as a country. And buttressed by that, or even made worse by that, is our high level of unemployment, you know, at 32%. According to the Stats SA, what Labor Force survey is 32, which is unacceptable and too high. And certainly these things, or our employment figures going up. I remember during the job summit, where we had ideas, an investment summit, where we were told there's an investment of 400 billion that is coming. The next thing, unemployment was going up. That's why I say we need an endeavor, and to be honest to ourselves. We can come and talk here and be politically correct, but we are going down unless we are honest to ourselves. BRICS, wait, G20, wait, everybody. What are we to ourselves? And we need to look at those things, unemployment rate. And again, issues like load shedding, high energy prices, oil, food, you know, inequalities, all those things, they've got an impact on collective bargaining. As I've said, they impact the livelihood. You know, we are in the catch-22 situation. There are these things, workers want to survive. How do we strike a balance between the two? Again, what is important is to have a job that is paying bad and you don't survive, or there's one argument. I'm giving you these things to think about because I don't want to give you answers. Or they say the worst levels of poverty is when somebody lacks an employment. We need to strike a balance between the two, and it's important when we are sitting at the table to think about those things because they are the ones that are informing collective bargaining. I don't think I'll need to say anything about the slides. As you know that the intention of the labor relations is to promote economic development, which is still a desired state. Economic development, social justice, possibly we have social justice. We still need to improve labor peace. Relatively, we have labor peace compared to the previous years. And democratization of the workplace and collective bargaining is part of the democratization of the workplace, where employers and employees, on the other hand, can engage on mutual interest issues and workplace issues, and productivity issues, which is not taking place. It seems as if it only happens at what you call wages and what, but other issues that affect collective bargaining and that affect those wages that we demand. We are not talking about them. And we say the intention of collective bargaining was to democratize. And possibly if we really democratize the workplace, we are talking, we are engaging, we are open to each other, we'll understand these issues. And as I've said, I was warmly hearted by the comment of the former General Secretary when he was talking about the context before we engage, in actions. We might engage, and the ultimate end, some are winners within labor, some are losers because there's retrenchment. Those are views. And then, you will know that collective bargaining is also enshrined in our constitution. It's a constitutional right to collective bargaining, but also you will know that the intention of the labor relations is to promote orderly collective bargaining. And I believe there won't be order unless we talk to each other, we understand each other, and we are able to take the context, the issues that I've raised earlier. When we begin to talk and reflect on these issues, we'll find each other, and even our demands, even our, not only the demands, the employers, what they give, the problem of South Africa is one. If you look over the years on issues of collective bargaining, you are certain and you know that parties will agree on 7% or 8% around that. Over the years, let me not talk about now the economy, because there are certain rights that have been taken away. It has been 7%, 8%. But what will happen, because I want to talk about, that's the orderly collective bargaining. Employers know that they want to give 7%, that's what they can afford, or 8%. And the union knows that they are going to settle at 8%. But what will parties do? They will fight, start at 1%, 3%, move in and what, and go and strike. When they have destroyed each other and the industry, that's when they reach an agreement. Whether there was order and what, I don't know. But after destroying each other, people can't be honest to each other. I don't know why in collective bargaining. I say 20% and the employers say 1% or 2%. But the truth, we know we are going to settle at 10%. Even when we open information to each other, we know. But we want to destroy each other first. Go to the streets. We lock each other out. All those issues. And then when we settle, they say this thing is like peace accord. Peace accord. When you are still alive, we don't sign peace, you must die, then there will be peace. That's how sometimes collective bargaining is. Unless there's somebody dead, there will never be orderly collective bargaining. And you will know that the intention of labor relations is also to promote central or centralized collective bargaining. And workers' participation is part of collective bargaining. Yes. And workplace democratization, I know you know this. What is collective bargaining? Is parties talking on issues of mutual interest, engaging each other, and if it happens outside the jurisdiction of institutionalized collective bargaining, there are limitations. But if it happens within the boundaries of bargaining council, which is institutionalized collective bargaining, you can agree on a number of issues. You can extend even those agreements to non-parties if you have majority or if you are sufficiently representative of the sector. Then we have statutory councils, which is a lower form of collective bargaining. You are not allowed here to extend wages and conditions, but you can extend other issues, agreements, you can extend them. Why I've raised this issue is because the two, bargaining councils and statutory council, they are very critical when you extend collective agreements. Now, you will know that the labor relations does not define sufficient representativity. But, and there have been councils that will come at 20%. In their sector, you find employers 20 or 21, the trade unions at 19, and then they will say, want to claim that space within the representativity issues, what we call sufficient representativity. Now, we have used, I don't know what the courts use, we have used statutory council because we have said statutory council is a lower form of a bargaining council. And for you to establish a statutory council, if I'm correct, my colleague Selina will confirm, is 30%. You need 30%. And that's the lowest form of collective bargaining, bargaining council. Therefore, if you fail here by 30% and then you want to extend, but those issues are debatable, and you want to extend, but you are failing at 30%, our assumption is that the industry has rejected your agreements or people don't support collective bargaining in that space. But as I'm saying, it's open to debates because lately we've been taken to courts. These figures don't matter a lot, but I'll give you the background of these figures. Yeah, the figures, they don't matter a lot, but what they say is that if you look at representativity, unfortunately, I didn't do the comparative analysis. When you look at representativity, I only took these figures to employers organizations, parties that have extended their collective agreement. When you look at that figures at the end, and I didn't take all the agreements, it was just to give you a synopsis and a glimpse to look what is happening. What is happening there? The representativity of trade unions is dwindling, is going down seriously so. The representativity. Employers, they are also their representativity, but it's moderate. And when you average the representativity of employers, at least they hover above 50%. And most of the collective agreements that are extended are not extended on the strength of trade unions. They're extended on the strength of the representativity of employers. That's what is happening right now. If we conclude the agreement and we want the agreement to affect the whole sector because we want fair competition, that agreement is extended on the strength of employers, not on trade unions. Therefore, your bargaining partner is losing its power. And the sad story is that our figures in the department has shown that trade unions have increased and number of employees have increased because there's a number of trade unions that are registering. But that has not turned into representativity or strengthening the representativity of trade unions. That's the challenge. That's what these figures are all about. Now, the other important thing for collective bargaining and for union organization to remain strong and not lose support is to comply with legal requirements, which lately has been a weakness in many organizations. Why legal legal requirements? Precisely because you don't exist for yourself. as an organization. You exist for your members. You remain accountable to your members. And it speaks about the democratization and the accountability of organizations. Now, if you don't submit legal requirements, financial statements, it means there's no accountability in that organization. And we can assume, or the registrar can assume, that is your wealth creation organization. You have just created something that will give you to survive. Therefore, legal requirements are very important. Your financial statements are very important to submit. Membership, calling conferences, what we call annual meetings, remain accountable makes you strong. Organizations that remain accountable to their members remain strong, but the organizations that are not accountable, most of them, they face their demise. The other thing that is coming out now, and we see when we extend collective agreements, there's a lot of challenges where people are challenging the agreements that minister extend to the industry on the basis of the last bullet point, your founding documents, non-compliance. Most of the time, when the minister is challenged at the courts, he's not challenged because the minister extended. The minister relied on the information that you gave him. But parties that are fighting you, some within your own ranks, they are fighting you on the basis that you didn't follow your constitution. Therefore, it's very important. Strong organizations, they will comply with legal requirements. They will make sure they comply with their founding documents. And such organization, I can assure you, rather than going down, they are going up. Thank you. Now let's deal with the challenges that are facing collective bargaining. Possibly legal requirements was one of them, but it's not such a huge issue. But it's imperative for organizations to pay attention to that. One of the challenges facing collective bargaining, as I've said, we are facing court challenges. And I've already told you, most of these court challenges is not the minister. I was arguing with my boss, Tembinkosi, and said, look, possibly I need to visit bargaining councils and call parties, and we engage, on the possibilities of what is coming out of court cases, so that we sensitize parties and what. But I can tell you the view that the department is holding is that most of these challenges, legal challenges, we should not get involved, because in the main, they don't challenge the minister. They challenge parties, because parties at the council didn't comply with, as I've said, with their legal requirements. And I've already talked about that dwindling representativity of trade unions, and it's worse. It's worse. There are a number of factors that is argued. The changing nature of work, the changing nature of work, atypical forms of employment are blamed and what. But again, it seems as if with new dispensation and new era, the issues of organization, the issues of, organization, what is it? They were left behind. And we encourage organizations. And sometimes we say, if it was easy for you guys during those days and what to organize and bring people, why now you don't do the same? Go out. And some of those things, it seems as if they don't need tweeters and what. They need you really on the ground. It's like a political party thinking that it does not campaign and think they will win elections on tweeters. They don't go and talk to the people. They use Twitter, Facebook, and talk to the people on those bases. And then when they lose elections, they wonder why. Because their rating was on Twitter, was on Facebook. Therefore, if you want to really to engage, to win support, you must go back to the ground. But I've said again, there are a number of trade unions, number of workers, the number of what you call percentage of workers have increased than previous years, but that has not translated. It tells you the problem is we need to do something. Oh, I thought you were telling me it's time up. It's closed. Okay, yeah, those are the challenges I can talk. Let's go. I'll use the helicopter view. The issue of parties fighting internally. What is happening lately, maybe this is the problem of our labor relations, the issue of freedom of association. The law has opened and many people have joined and they are applying to be recognized in the workplace. When they get there, they fight each other, parties, rather than engage in collective bargaining. The others want to portray other parties as weak, precisely because, and you would know Marikana was as a result of not employers or what, but because of union fighting. Therefore, proliferation has caused us problem. The issue of unreasonable demands, when the economy is bad, you need what and the offers and all these things, and offer demands and offers. You know, as I've said, parties will fight and engage the attitude, the winner takes all, win at any cost. You know, rising, this is one of the issues that also affect collective, changing nature of work. If you look at the retail sector, you would know the Ubers and all these things, there's a problem. Are these people employees or not? And global pressures on you, you are competing out there, and other people from outside, you must compete with them, but the wages that you must offer, these are the challenges, the things that you need to strike a balance on. And you might ask the question, what the government has done. You would know that we have amended the legislation to assist you. I will not read it, it's standing for the second time. I feel intimidated. I will not read, but you know we have amended to make it easy for you parties to extend your collective agreements to non-parties. The government has done something to support you. Because sometimes when we fight, and those are the benefits of collective bargaining. You know, your voice can help address the challenges that you have, deal with wages. If we engage genuinely, so we will strike, you know, those agreements that respond to the environment and those issues. The future of collective bargaining, did I go down? Colleagues, my apologies, man. Allow me to, thank you. Yeah, because but again, let me answer your question. The future of collective bargaining depends on the parties themselves. If we can mature as parties, we are able to talk and be honest to each other. We are able to read the climax, you know, the environment that we operate in. As I've said, the reserve governor said 7% is not a problem, but it's the productivity talking to that 7%. Thank you, colleagues.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Very, very insightful. Colleagues, I do want to mention, as you know, we started late for various reasons. And because of that, we will be having discussions with the panelists, and members have got other obligations. So we are going to skip the plenary session for labor. But as I said, a lot has already been said, a lot has already been done. And it's important to know that this information is shared with us by subject matter experts and captains of industry. I want to point out that, you know, it's as Stephen has said, the world has become so technologically advanced. Probably 15 years ago, access to information was very limited. It depended on who you knew. Now there are social media platforms where we can easily gain access to information. Stephen, we make use of platforms like Juta and LexisNexis, who explains in detail the background on how we get to labor regulations or legislative regulations and so forth. But also I just read a piece by the Training Managers Group, and one of the things that they've mentioned is that we learn 10% from what we hear. We learn 10% from what we see. We learn 20% from what we hear and see. We learn 30% from what we hear, see, and feel. But what we learn out the most, or where we acquire the biggest amount of learning, is either through discussion. So as soon as we engage each other and we discuss, that's when we learn most. And the optical or the pinnacle means of learning is by transfer of information through teaching. And you can hear from all these people who have shared this information are subject matter experts, and they haven't acquired that status just through listening. They've acquired that status by embracing opportunities like this and sharing the information with us. So thank you, Stephen, and all speakers who have been here. So with that said, and because we're not having the panel discussion, I trust you will accept that, and I trust that you will learn, as we said, as the second highest pinnacle of learning through discussions. Please reach out to our speakers. The presentations will be shared to you, but due to time constraints, we unfortunately cannot have the last panel discussion. But based on what Stephen has said, the future of bargaining councils, making changes and creating employment and well-being of employment is the objective. The question is whether to increases in terms of collective bargaining, which is one of the sole mandates, are warranted in terms of the global and local economy. It's something that is overlooked, is what he states. The winner takes all approach without considering the economic situation is the cause of collective bargaining demise. We are in a catch-22 situation between employers and employees. Positional versus interest-based bargaining is an issue that needs to be addressed. The recommendation from Stephen is that there's an urgent need for an Indaba to relook at our situation and review our bargaining model. Otherwise, it's bound to fail. I think it comes back to what we've said before. We have to have these types of Indabas, have these discussions, and really establish, is it valid, authentic, current, and sufficient? So all these socioeconomic factors means that if we do not look at this, there's a great possibility that collective bargaining will proliferate. What's the word he said? Yeah, demise. Okay. But thanks for all of that, Stephen. These notes are being captured. They will also be shared with you. Okay, so as I've mentioned, panel discussion, unfortunately, not going to take place, but we are going to call up our next speaker, which is John Buerta from Global Business, also giving his viewpoints on the labor situation in our country. So John currently joint CEO of Global Business Solutions and CEO of Circle and Square, previously Group Executive HR Director of the largest JSE listed workplace solutions business, lead negotiator at NEDLAC on labor market chamber matters, business representative to the International Labour Organization, ILO in Geneva, ministerial appointment to the Employment Equity Commission. John has been married to Michelle for 30 years this December, and is a father of 3 and an avid sportsman. So John, thank you, welcome. Let's give him a round of applause. Using this.
Good day, everybody. I was asked to give my biography and it said some personal information, so I thought I'd share 30 years of marriage. You can come speak to me afterward for a few tips. I don't know if it has a place, Stephen, in labor law though, but certainly I've learned a lot from your presentation. So colleagues, I'm not going to keep you busy for too long. I'm going to reflect on 3 slides. I want to reflect on what's happening in the labor law environment. I've had the privilege, as you've heard, of sitting at NEDLAC with Stephen and his colleagues with labor, negotiating the 2015 LRA amendments, and what he articulated to you about the importance of democratization of the workplace, the importance of connection. He truly lives it in his life, and my interactions with him have always been balanced, have always been cordial and filled with human dignity. I'm reminded of Darwin, who said it's not the strongest that survive, nor the most intelligent, but those that are the most adaptable to change, which is good news for me because I'm from Ladysmith in KZN. When it was Career and Guidance Day, the teacher looked at my IQ and said, "We'll apply for any job in HR. They should, they should accept you in HR." But what I did obviously do okay was adapt. And I want to talk very, very briefly about adaptability. If we take a look at this next slide. So colleagues, maybe I should use this flipper. But nevertheless, I want you to reflect, and it touches on and interlinks with what Stephen was saying. If you have children, you would have watched Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And you'd remember the visual of that factory, that ugly, dark, smoky, sooty factory where they manufactured these sweets and these chocolates. And people were literally slave labor in those environments. So if you look at the industrial revolutions, labor law has had its roots and its origins largely in the master-servant relationship. So the first industrial revolution, an absolute absence of any employment rights, people were treated with disrespect, and of course, over time, it brought to bear on the establishment of the likes of the ILO and international labor standards. What we then found was labor law evolved into the space of what I would call the task. So we started getting the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And they dealt with data and they said, well, people need rest, they need annual leave, they need sick leave. Women at the workplace will fall pregnant from time to time and they need to be recognized and catered for in that regard. And labor law started evolving into saying, well, there's a foundational right to certain things. If you work during night shift and you're sacrificing your health and you're sacrificing your time with your families, well, then we need to recognize that, because your circadian rhythm, that rhythm within you that says when it's dark outside, you should be at home with your wife or your girlfriend. Maybe for some of you with both, I'm not sure. Maybe your wife and your girlfriend. But nevertheless, colleagues, that circadian rhythm that says you should be at home goes into overdrive. And what we see is we have anxiety disorders, sleeping disorders, eating disorders, and people need to be managed and catered for in the context of their health and safety. Interestingly, on my way here, a client said to me, "John, if people earn above the threshold, can you let them work as long as you want without paying them overtime?" And I thought, I wonder who's asking. I hope it's not the CEO, because then we've got a bit of a problem. And I said, well, they can work long hours, but you still have to have cognizance for their health and safety. So you see, colleagues, the evolution of labor law, third industrial revolution, very data and facts and figures focused. You don't have to think really hard about how many days of annual leave, what overtime rates are required. You don't have to think very hard. What we see now happening over the last 15 years is labor laws moving into what I call the values domain. Labor laws moving into the space where it's not just about data and it's not just about interpreting how much annual leave and sick leave you have. It's now in the world of what I call human-centric labor laws. If you read the Code of Practice on Harassment, the most often repeated phrase is psychological safety. Who would have ever thought that labor law would legislate psychological safety? Who would have thought that rolling your eyes at your colleague could not only land you in court, but deprive you of your employment equity compliance certificate and tender opportunities? And that's what I really enjoyed about Stephen's presentation, because as you can see on the screen, and I can't read back to front, but I'll tell you more or less what I recall is there, we've seen that organizations need to move away from just having managers to leaders. As Simon Sinek says, managers take charge of their people, but leaders take care of their people. There is no place for toxicity at the workplace. There is no place for people to not be allowed to do and be the best that they can be because of the differences that they have within themselves and of themselves. Toxic leaders are getting exposed and are getting dealt with if they are not able to transition through change. We need to move, colleagues, from the point of view of data to values. Values are those things that drive our behavior. We often have companies come to us and say, John, we've retrenched, we've restructured, we've introduced new technologies, we've recruited new people, we've recapitalized, and we're not getting the return on investment. What's the problem? And inevitably, colleagues, the challenge is that we have an organization dominated by managers rather than by leaders. And you need both. We can't just lead and take care, because we'll hold hands and sing kumbaya and no work will ever get done. Do you agree? But we can't also just be critical all the time and push and force and threaten, because what then happens is people are fearful and silent. And labor law has gone into the world of what I would talk about as emotional intelligence. Labor law has legislated emotional intelligence. These cases that get referred to the CCMA about racism, name calling, sexual harassment, racial harassment, LGBTQIA issues, where do you think that comes from, colleagues? It comes from the behavior, the background, the thoughts, the values of people that manifests in their conduct. But how many organizations actually go and train their leaders on leading and managing with EQ? How many companies make you aware of your propensity to do certain things? So I want to just get you to think about the future of labor law. And as we move, and we're on the cusp of the fifth industrial revolution, I put it to you that labor law is going to become more and more a combination of connection and task. Collective bargaining, why does it fail? Because you default immediately into the world of the task. I'm offering you 1%, we want 15%, and it's task, task, task focused. There's no connection. If you ever phone a call center and you say, I've just been mugged, while I was drawing money, I've just been mugged rather, and you walk into the bank branch and you go to the teller and you say, I've just been mugged. They've run off with my card and everything. What's the first thing the bank teller says? What's your account number? Give me your green barcoded ID. There's no connection. They go straight into the task. There's nothing, I hope you're okay. Don't worry, we can sort it out for you. How do employees and unions and employers feel around democratization? Democratization requires interpersonal skills. It requires connecting with people, even if you've got different interests. And labor law and the success going forward in terms of labor law depends on your ability to connect as well as to do the task. Anyone can do the task if you're trained on it. Tasks and skills and knowledge are there to apply in a known environment, but your character is used in an unknown environment. It's only when you put through the fire, it's only when you know that there's deep change required for you to succeed, that your character comes into play. And character is a very, very scarce ingredient in tough times. And that's why you need leaders. Colleagues, on the screen, you'll see the labor laws that I've been reflecting on just on 2013. You know, the National Minimum Wage Act, for example, a 9.6% increase. We need to get returns on those investments, and a very important and worthy increase. We already see calls by the Department of Employment and Labor and the National Minimum Wage Condition. They've already issued a gazette calling for submissions on next year's national minimum wage increases. We see the skills levy grant regulations, the speakers earlier were talking about that, being put out for a restructuring and a reallocation of the levy grant system and changing the nature and extent of that. That's been asked for comment. For those of you who smoke a Zol every now and then, you'll be very pleased to know that the Cannabis for Private Purposes Bill is making its way through Parliament. Yes, you can carry 100 grams of dried cannabis in your pocket. You just can't take it to work with you, and you shouldn't smoke it or have traces of it when you do get to work. But that bill is making its way through as well. You see, colleagues, a lot of these laws, if you look at the Employment Equity Amendment Act and the codes of practice on harassment, they're moving out of the black and white, cut and dry interpretation into what I would call values. Do you remember during COVID-19, the debates that companies would have around vaccination? Where people have differences in values, I had clients coming to me in pharmaceutical industry saying, we want mandatory vaccinations. Our sales reps are in the hospitals, they're in doctors' rooms. There's got to be mandatory vaccination. And we went through the legislative process, and then there were 10 or 12 people who just refused for religious reasons or for bodily integrity or for whatever reason it was. You try and convince someone to change their value system. If they believe they get vaccinated, they're going straight to hell. If that's their value system and their religion, their belief, you aren't going to change it. And it's those strained values that don't always overlap that require deep trust, so that even when we're different, we know it's coming from a good place and we want your best interests at heart. And these laws, colleagues, are asking exactly for that. These laws are asking you to build deep, deep trust relationships. The National Health Insurance Bill, huge pushback by business in respect of the NHI bill going currently at the National Council of Provinces, saying that VAT, for example, would have to be increased from 15 to 21% to fund that kind of thing. Or personal income tax would have to be increased significantly. And in this very volatile environment, I think of Darwin, and I think, well, who's going to adapt to change? See, colleagues, adaptability requires deep levels of empathy, deep levels of emotional intelligence. So my final slide that I wanted to share with you today then is talking about all of this change, because in the previous slide you'd see that it's not what happens to you that matters, but how you respond to that. And in those circles, every organization is having to review policies and procedures. Have you got your adoption parental leave? Have you got your commissioning surrogacy leave up to date? Have you reviewed your substances policies? There are recent judgments around alco testing and breathalyzers. What about POPI? What about PIA? You see, all of these laws have got an impact on your policies, your procedures, your practices. All of these laws have got an impact on how you recruit, select, career, succession plan. And you need to keep up, colleagues, or else you're going to get left behind. For me, this is the ultimate, bless you, objective. This is the ultimate aspiration that I came across a few years ago, and I believe is a benchmark for every single stakeholder, whether it's a trade union, whether it's an employer, an employer's organization, a civic organization. But in this environment that we're in with diverse interests, in this environment we're in that is highly, highly volatile. I mean, the 6th of October, we're going to have a stay away. COSATU have served notice of a national stay away for economic protest action. The 6th of October. For example, saying organizations shouldn't be allowed to retrench just to increase their profits. They should only retrench when they're facing significant financial fatigue. So how do we deal with stakeholders with disparate interests? How do we deal with our own staff members who are arriving at work every day? Some have got financial problems, others are going through divorces, others have got health problems. They don't check that in at the front desk. And colleagues, my parting shot to you is labor law expertise and competence is a combination of what you see on the screen. On the one hand, it requires competence. You need the knowledge and the skills and the experience. As the program director said, we learn so much through our experience, through collaboration and engagement. So we need competence because the laws are changing, the case law is changing. And we need to understand and be confident in our abilities. But we need an equal dose of character. And look at the right-hand side. I think it's on the right. Look at character. Look at the attributes of character. Caring for each other. Transparency. Honesty. Authenticity. You see, colleagues, when you're sitting and you're negotiating, when you're busy going through a transition in your organizations, your competence is not going to get you through the change curve. It's the deep-seated levels of trust that you've built. Even if you disagree, the fact is that you've collaborated coming from a good space in your heart. And organizations that have high levels of resistance to change are organizations that have not addressed the character side of this particular equilibrium. In parting, I just want to end off with another Simon Sinek example that he gave. He said, do you ever go home in the evenings and call the family around? So as you heard, I'm married 30 years, got 3 kids. Imagine me calling them around. Say, listen, I went to this amazing conference at the RMI today. But there was this one speaker, Stephen, and he reminded me of interest rates going up. You know, we've got bonds, we've got debt. So I wanted you to line up in front of me, dear family. And now I just want to consult with you because, you know, these times are tough. I need to cut my budget. I've got to retrench one of you. So should we use last in, first out? And my 10-year-old, like, she starts crying. No, I don't want last in, first out. So should we use skills? Okay, how many of you actually wash the dishes and clean your room in the last few? You see, colleagues, and I'm joking about it, but I think, you know, we all need to be in it together. We all need to suffer a little bit in order for the whole to suffer less. And it's going to take a lot of commitment, a lot of smart trust to get through these tough, tough times. Thank you very much for your time. Program Director, back to you. Thanks.
Thank you, John. You can be seated. Wish we could have the panel, but unfortunately time does not allow us. But yeah, very, 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 very powerful. I will just summarize what John said. Hopefully I've captured that correctly. The first thing I want to ask John is just a bit of advice, and I think he has given me that advice. I just need to ask him what do I do with my wife? I think she's broken, John. And I need your manual because she's acting like my pool motor. She's whining a lot. All right. Adaptability of the labor market has its origin from a master-slave relationship. We need to move to a foundational rights for employees and away from prescriptive laws, which were methods and methodologies applied throughout the years and through different industrial revolutions. Human-centric law is what was the focus on, and now currently we need to promote leadership and the true sense thereof, moving away from data and values known to labor law and to an emotional environment. As we see collective bargaining defaults to tasking, mandating only, and distance itself from people, employers, as well as employees. So John made reference to certain acts. The National Minimum Wage Act, as we know, it's quite a recent act. I mean, 2018 was only introduced, and those types of things has to be reviewed, latching onto what Stephen said, the need for an Indaba Skills Development Act and the increase of levies, and then, as John also pointed out, the Zoll Bill, you know, smoking as well. The labor legislation is moving away from the black and white decision-making. Provisions of values, adaptability requires empathy and emotional intelligence, which is needed for bargaining councils and collective bargaining. These need to be introduced and sustained, or we might also, as Stephen said, see the demise of collective bargaining. So that is it from that. Again, I will record all these notes. From my side, thank you, colleagues, for joining this session. This will be my last show. Before I hand over to Naftali to do the closing for us, and before I let him come up, I'll just read his bio. Naftali has started his career in the automotive manufacturing industry, where he qualified as an artisan. He progressed to work at the TVET College and later joined the Department of Labor National Trade Test Center called Indlela. Before joining Masita in 2005 as a quality assurer, he has extensive experience in technical education and training and quality assurance and assessments, partnership development with public entities on special projects as a senior manager of the quality assurance and partnerships. He holds a national diploma in engineering, postgraduate diploma in business management, and is working and completing his MBA. He has for the past 10 years been at Masita and currently is the acting CEO of Masita. So thank you, colleagues, from my side. Naftali, will you join us on the stage and do the closing for us?
Good afternoon. Just a correction, I'm acting COO. Lest I get fired after this. Good afternoon, the president of RMI. You know, I call her by first name John, and Mr. Jackie Welifir, and all people who are here. I was looking at the time and wondering if we will meet the timeline. And often when you go over time, you lose your audience. But I've never been lost in this session. You know, this is the first time I attend something like this, the RMI Labor Laws and Skills Development Conference. There was a lot of, obviously, emphasis on labor laws, which is critical because the environment is changing. And if one has to go back to the start where Ms. Elsa Bota, I also know her from probably 2005, she highlighted the, I usually call it a swear word. Me and Louis will speak about this. The triple BE and the employment equity and, the importance of making sure that the, company embraces, and transformation. Transformation is very key. Mesita, I'll talk about the motto and retail. There are talks that it's not transformed. But hearing you as RMI preaching transformation, it's good, and I think it's a good support to your members. The department from higher education was represented by Mr. Savelo. We also worked together a long time ago. He emphasized the move towards vocational education and training emphasis. There is also, picking up from the questions from the floor, where it appears like the government underplayed the role of technical schools. They've now seen the light. They are implementing vocational and technical schools back in all schools. That's their aim, and therefore supporting and enhancing the capacity of the technical colleges. And we as Mesita are also embracing that. We've undertaken to run a pilot where we want to support 11 technical high schools in Gauteng, with tools and equipment, and just see how it progresses. If we do it well, then we'll be able to do it nationally. You cannot do TVET and leave out the technical schools. Some of us, come from an academic school, whatever it's called, and now going into apprenticeships, you would know a tool. In my language, there's no spanner. There's no word for a spanner. So it was a very difficult, going into apprenticeship. It was very difficult. But the company that I did apprenticeship was very helpful, because before I started apprenticeship, during school holidays, they allowed, the students to come in, observe how the apprentices are doing. We used to clean a lot of machines that were used by artisans. Then the centers of specialization is one of the models that's very important. It started as a pilot, and Mr. Buthelezi really emphasized it. And I think that's where we're moving. I'm even afraid to mention the transition from legacy trades. I've had a lot of complaints today about, how outdated the legacy trades are versus what the, US employers need. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel with progression to occupational qualifications, which are the latest form of qualifications that should address the issue of people being trained carburetors. It was interesting from a lady who used the F word that people would come with qualifications when they get tested, they do not have the skill. A few weeks ago, I went to Ford Motor Company, and they were saying qualified artisans, they would put them into a practical assessment. It's part of the pre-selection into employment. And they say from the 200, 5 would pass. And I'm talking about people who are holding artisan certificate. I'm an artisan and I'm maintaining my trade. I service my own vehicle, Louis, just to make sure that I do not lose the skill. Trades and artisan programs is not like riding a bicycle. If you are not using the skill, you lose it. A good welder will listen to how the machine sound and know if it's doing a proper job or not. Mr. Stephen Ratai enlightened me on, the collective bargaining and the future. And I think if you listen to him and also what Mr. John Botta said, you need to work together towards the same goal. For the first time, I had to sit in the bargaining council of Mesita in the union. And I would feel like, hey, I think we're wasting time here, Why don't we just cut to the chase? We know what the board has given us as a mandate. Let's tell them, guys, this is our mandate, nothing more, nothing less. But I couldn't say it. Somebody said, no, it's a song on dance. Okay. So I joined the song and dance. But I think the emphasis here is we need to trust each other. I like your quote, Mr. Botta. Broken task can be repaired, but it will never gain same strength. Maybe it's also a good lesson for me in my marriage. I'll work on it. But I think this was very fruitful, and I think the mandate of today has been achieved. And I would like to, on behalf of RMI and everybody who's here, thank you dearly for coming.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. My colleague Jeff injured himself, unfortunately, last night, and we hope he recovers soon. So on behalf of myself and Jeff, thank you very much. We rushed a bit, but I think we made it, and Naftali summed it up very well. And we're looking forward to perhaps hosting something like this here again and making it a little bit more expansive. Thank you very much.